All right, welcome everyone. Welcome Mr. Chris Sarandon. So we're here to talk about your contributions to the horror genre, obviously. Pretty substantial. So let's start off with 1985's Fright Night. So, tell us how you got involved with that project, how the casting process went.
Sure. I actually got a script from the producer, Herb Jaffe, and it was. They said, we'd like to offer you this movie. And at the time, I had been doing a bunch of stuff for television. I'd worked on a couple of Hallmark Hall of Fame specials. One of them was adaptations of great novels. You Can't Go Home Again by Thomas Wolfe and The Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. And I was feeling pretty kind of, I'm a very important actor now, and I'm doing Charles Dickens, and I'm doing Thomas Wolfe, and I've got an Academy Award nomination, and and I looked at the cover of the script, and it said Fright Night, and I went, oh my God, I can't do a movie called Fright Night. Now, bear in mind that this was a time when the horror genre was less sort of in the culture. That is, the horror genre was very much kind of encapsulated with a lot of rabid fans, but that it was considered, particularly in the movie business, to be kind of the kiss of death. If you did a horror movie because your career was on the skids, or you were only working for money or whatever, right? And I thought, well, I can't do this movie. I'm very important, and at the same time, I've always had the belief that it's important, if somebody thinks that you're important enough to give you an offer to do a part, that you should read the script, right? So that, all right, I'll read this script called Fright Night, and I'll turn it down, and then I'll just go about my business being an important actor. And so I start reading it, and as soon as within 10 pages, I'm like, this is really pretty good. And I keep reading, and I keep going, well, this is really better than pretty good. This is really, really well done. And the script, as I finished it, and I thought, it's beautifully constructed. It's funny in parts. It is reverential to the vampire genre. And at the same time, it has fun with it, but it doesn't make fun of it. And that kind of what was happening at the time, right? That Tom Holland, the director and the writer, the guy who wrote it, felt strongly that the vampire genre had gotten on hard times. That there were a lot of movies that were making fun of it. Love at First Bite. There were a couple of other movies that were kind of like it, right? And they were all basically winking at you like, we know this is silly, so we're just going to make fun of it. And Tom's feeling was, it's not silly, it's important, but it's also important to have an approach that is contemporary, which is, times have changed, right? And so I think he walked a really important line between those two opposite impulses. One of being reverential, but at the same time kind of having fun with it, that the whole cross thing that runs through the movie, you have to have faith for that to work, that sort of thing. And so I called my agent and I said, let's explore this. I want to meet these guys. So I went out and I met with Tom and the producer, Herb Jaffe. And Tom sat down with me and he literally described the movie from the beginning to the end. He described every shot that he had in his head that he was going to use in the script. And I was sold. I said, let's do this. You guys just work it out with my agent and I'm going to do the movie. And that was it.
Yeah. So talk about the cast of that movie. You got to work with, obviously, the legendary Roddy McDowall in many intense scenes.
Yeah, a great man, and a virtual history of the movie business. And just hanging out with Roddy was just extraordinary. Him talking about his life in the movies, becoming a friend. He had these legendary dinners at his house where he would invite people from all branches of the movie business. He would invite writers and cinematographers, directors, costume design. I mean, not just people who are famous, but also behind-the-scenes people. And I just found out at this convention that there's a place in Hollywood, a museum in Hollywood that has Roddy's bathroom, because the reason why that's important is because he had pictures in his bathroom of all the famous people he knew, right? With him and Elizabeth Taylor and these pictures are in a museum in LA somewhere, in Hollywood, I think. Somebody here probably knows where, but at any rate, he was an extraordinary guy, yeah, and also a great collaborator and very easy to get along. We became friends, and he had worked with my wife as an actress on a tour that they did with Vincent Price and Vincent's wife, whose name is Coral Brown, and so it was wonderful, and we had a great time, and there was a real kind of interesting sort of melding because Bill Ragsdale, Amanda Burse, and Steve Jeffries all were very young. They were in their 20s, early or mid-20s, all playing high school kids, and there was Roddy, who was I think a generation maybe, or he's a generation older than I, and me, and we all just kind of meshed, and we're still friends. We still stay in touch with each other. We're on a text chain with Jonathan Stark, who played my sidekick, and Bill and Amanda, and we're still in touch with each other, and it's a great group of people, really, and funny, all of them, very funny people.
So I think we can all agree that the nightclub scene is pretty badass, right? So the film was a success, and by the time they came around to possible sequel, supposedly you had a conflict. Supposedly, because you were shooting something else.
My conflict was the sequel.
Gotcha.
Essentially, and it has nothing to do with, I think Tommy Lee did a great job with the sequel, but I just thought, we've done this. And I think Tom Holland felt the same way. Let's don't try to, as my wife describes it, putting a hat on a hat. When you've done something, you move on. And I felt we'd really done that. The character, I guess there was a possibility the character would come back, but after that kind of ending, I don't think so. And to try to resurrect it didn't make a lot of sense to me, and I guess I think what they did was fine, was great.
What I was getting at, and I guess I was wrong, was
1988
you were shooting another movie in the horror genre as a classic.
Oh.
A little film called Child's Play.
Yes, correct. Yeah. And that was a result of Tom going to bat for me, really, because the studio, as I recall, was not very happy with the idea of my doing it. They had some other ideas of who should play the cop. And in the shooting of Fright Night, Tom and I, we became good friends. And Tom is very opposite to me. He's a very volatile personality. And he had some conflict with the studio people during the making of Fright Night. Not terrible, because they basically left him alone, but there were a few times when he did. And he'd lose his temper, and I would be the, hey, chill. I'd go to him, and I'd say, Tom, we need you here, so just calm down, everything's fine. And having been Tom was a veteran of the movie business. He had been a screenwriter. He'd had a couple of scripts that had been done into studio pictures. But I'd done a lot of stuff. And also, I think just basically I'm a little more even-tempered than he is. And so I think that he instinctively felt that I would be a good moderating force in the making of Child's Play, because Child's Play was not all his project. He worked on the script, but it was, I think, I forget the guy's name, Kirshner, and I think that's his name, who had kind of created the idea of the character, but Tom took the script and kind of put it through his ringer, and came out with an adaptation. I don't think his name is on the script. I'm not sure. Don't correct me if I'm wrong. And so he really insisted on me to play Mike Norris. And basically, I sat back and go, okay, fight it out, guys. I'd love to do the movie, and he prevailed.
Yeah, I think we can all agree it was a good choice, and we're very happy you're in that film. So,
thank you.
Talk about what it was like working with another screen legend the Chucky doll, the animatronic Chucky doll.
He was a son of a bitch. Very tough to work with. He was never on time. He was always late to his makeup calls, cursing constantly. I mean, it was really a trial. So I paid for it.
All right, so let's skip ahead a little bit.
And I'm being both literal and figurative in that the Chucky doll was a pain in the ass. Not just the doll, because there were various iterations of the doll. There was the animatronics, where they had a false floor. There were guys under the floor working his arms and his face. There were children, small children. There were little people on big sets. They do oversized sets so that the doll looked even smaller. And Tom knew how to mix all that stuff together. But it was a hard shoot. It was cold in Chicago. It was brutally cold. I ended up having sinus surgery at one point because I had a sinus infection. Freezing. It was like the Chicago, if you guys any of you here spent time in Chicago in the winter, the wind off Lake Erie, is it Lake Superior, I think? Whatever it is murderous. And basically the actors are the ones who pay for it because everybody else is dressed like an Eskimo. And we are in, regular clothes. You're underdressed, but it's a pair of long underwear. Come on. And you're not wearing a hat because it hides your face. So it was pretty brutal. And a lot of things like, I remember, I still have the memory of it, one day sitting in the studio while they're shooting something else, and there's a car radio panel in front of me, and all I had to do was just reach for the panel while a knife is coming in, right? Spending like 6 hours doing that. So there are things about it that are not fun. And plus the weather. It was a difficult shoot. But it was, it came out great. Yeah.
I think we all love the end result, right? Like it's a great film. Still celebrated today, obviously. So, all right, we'll move off horror a little bit.
Yeah.
Fast forward a couple years, you work with Tim Burton and Nightmare Before Christmas, the voice of Jack Skellington. So how did you get involved with that project? Did you do voice work previously? Or how did you end up?
I had done little bits of voice work here and there, but not much. And I literally auditioned. And at the time, all the songs had been recorded. And as you guys are probably aware, if you're fans of these movies, that you shoot the recording first, the voice first. So in this case, Danny Elfman had done the orchestrations, had done the music for all the songs, had sung the songs, and they had animated the songs. And they were looking for a voice match for Danny, for an actor who had a kind of similar vocal quality to Danny, and I auditioned. That was basically it. Thinking about it now, the chances were, 1,000 to 1 if you go into an audition for a voiceover that you get it based on your voice matching somebody, and then the movie becoming literally Halloween.
Yeah.
Now, it's the nightmare is now. It is Halloween. It's crazy.
Did you think it would blow up the way? It's a great, two holidays. You had Halloween, you had Christmas. It's celebrated both.
Yeah.
Both. It's.
The only intimation I had of it was that they, at the finish of the movie, and I'm sure you guys are aware, the movie was directed by Henry Selick, who directed Coraline and James and the Giant Peach. He's a master of the stop motion genre. And we'd already finished the shooting. I'd been going up to San Francisco where the studio was to record with Henry. And I'd gone there literally every 3 or 4 months for 2 years. And I'd record 2 or 3 scenes with Henry, and then they would animate those scenes. And then I'd go back up and I'd record and then animate again. And at the end of all that, I remember that I'd remembered even in the recording that there were some things I was not crazy about. And through Kathleen, I forget Kathleen's last name, one of the producers, I'd said, is there any chance we'll go back in and do any ADR, which is recording after everything's done? You sync to the visual. And she said, yeah, Tim wants to go in and look at some stuff too. Would you go in with Tim? And I said, are you kidding? Go in with Tim Burton? Stop me. So I was they sent me a VHS of the movie, right, in black and white. And it has, usually when they do that, there's a time code underneath, so the visuals are not really that apparent. I mean, it's cool to look at, but it's not like the version that you see now, right? And so I pop it in the VHS, and at the time I was in Los Angeles shooting something else, and my kids were with me, and they're all like, I don't know, 8, 6, and 2, right? And I'm sitting there, and I've got a pad, and I'm writing down stuff that I think I'd like to do again if Tim is willing to do them with me. And I suddenly realize as I'm watching, I turn around, and my kids are standing there, and they're all like this. That's the first intimation I had that this was going to be really special. Now, I'd seen the songs that had already been animated, and that was really amazing. I thought, oh, this is incredible. But that's when I thought, oh. And interestingly, Danny Elfman tells the story that he went to the first screening for the Disney executives. And he steps into an elevator with the executives after the movie, and they were all going, Jesus Christ. How are we going to sell this movie to kids? The kids will never, I mean, they're going to be scared to death. We can't. And they ended up shunting the movie from the Disney label over to the Touchstone label, which is their other studio imprimatur, and released it on Touchstone because they thought it was going to be a disaster with children, right? It goes to show you.
Absolutely. It still holds up now. It seems to be getting more popular. It's incredible.
It's become exponential. I mean, it's just amazing to me what's happened to it. And I know from the reaction of my own grandchildren who started watching it when they were very, like 2, 3 years old, kids get it. They right away, and it becomes more interesting to them as they get older because they get more stuff from it, But when they're kids, it's mesmerizing,
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Is Ken in here? Yeah. Ken, you have the mic to go around for questions? Okay. Well, before we do that, I have one last question for you before we kick it over to the audience.
Checking to make sure
Sure,
I'm
sure.
not being sued. Yes, go ahead.
What is your favorite horror movie that you're not in?
Well, the ones that I recommend are movies that I kind of, I'm a movie buff anyway, but of course I love the great Hollywood, the James Whale movies, the Dracula, Frankenstein, The Bride of Frankenstein. They're just great films, right? But in the class with them, I think, personally, are the movies that scared the hell out of me when I was an adult. And one of them is a movie called Don't Look Now. It's a movie directed by a guy named Nicholas Roeg, who was a cinematographer, and I think it was one of his first, if not his only, directorial movie with Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland about a couple who lose a child. And the aftermath of that's truly frightening. And then one of my other favorites is Let the Right One In. That great Eastern European movie about the two kids, the little girl who's the vampire. They're that kind of movie as well as being scary, right? That they have heart, they say something about the human condition as well as being in the horror genre.
That's high praise coming from Jerry Dandridge, so there we go. All right, I think we're going to kick it over to the audience. Anyone have a question right here? I saw
There's
your
a
hand.
mic coming your way.
Yep.
Yeah,
You
sure.
go. You go, Ken. You go.
Is right here. Hello, Mr. Sarandon. My question to you is, what was your most challenging scene in Fright Night, if you had a challenging scene in there?
A challenging scene in Fright Night?
Yes.
But the end of the movie. The big, because that was an 8-hour makeup. Yeah, in the days when, they didn't have appliances that just went over you and they smoothed them out and you went on. I would go in at 4 o'clock in the morning, and we had a crazy Kenny, I forget Kenny's last name, who was the one of the lead makeup guy, FF makeup guys, and he'd be sleeping in the, how sometimes trailers have little nooks up above? Well, Ken would be sleeping up there, and I'd walk him to the trailer, and I'd go, where's the makeup guy? And suddenly I'd hear, hey, man, let's go. Let's rock and roll. Come on. And that was the energy that I was greeted with at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then Ken would make me up, literally piece by piece by piece, blending. And because it was 8 hours, I got bored. So I come from the theater, so I was used to doing my own makeup, because you do in the theater, at least you used to, not anymore. And so I would make up my hands. So they'd put this thing on, they'd blend the latex into my fingers, but then I'd do the stippling and the coloring and all that. And so it was great, because I was occupied while Ken was working as well. And then I'd go to work at noon, and then shoot until 6 or 7 o'clock, and then go home, go to sleep, get up at 3 o'clock, 3:30, and go to makeup for like a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that. Yeah, a long time. So it was a killer, but it was great, you know. Yeah. That was the most challenging, certainly. That and the contact lenses earlier in the movie, which were glass and painted, and they had paint on them, so you could only wear them for 15 minutes. And then they have to stop shooting because your eyes would blow up. Yeah. Then the old days, folks. In olden times, when we walked to school uphill both ways.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm a fan of both, but I'm just wondering, given the choice between movies like Fright Night and Child's Play, where you're physically in a space working with prosthetics, practical effects, a puppet, so on, versus voice acting like you did with Nightmare, do you have a preference for which type of acting and why?
Well, voice acting is it's a mix of rote. You're doing things over and over and over again, and the director's going, no, try it this way. No, try it this way. How about this reading? And then they'll give you the reading. So sometimes it's, oh, come on, you know? But at the same time, you'll also get a direction like, all right, give me 5 and just off the top of your head. So you can literally improvise, not with the words, but with the character. And so in a way, it lets you immerse yourself in the character in a totally different way than, if you're on screen. So they're just different animals. The challenges are different. And they're both really interesting. I think if I had a preference, if somebody said this is what you can only do this or you can only do this, I'd probably want to just act and not do voice. But voices, now I do more voice just because I'll get a call from Disney. Come in and we're doing a such and such event, and we need such and so and so and so. And I'll record ask Amy, who runs the studio where I go. Yeah. And I go in and I record for 6-8 hours, and then they use it for whatever. You're welcome.
I always find it interesting hearing the roles that actors regret not taking on, or roles that they could have auditioned for, but they thought The Matrix was a really lame idea for a movie, things like that. Do you have any kind of long-lost regrets about roles you could have taken or even auditioned for that you passed by?
I'm trying to think, and it's interesting because I've never been asked this question. And most of my life, I've been mixing lots of different things of doing. I worked in the theater. I've done Broadway musicals. I've done straight plays on Broadway and off Broadway, and these movies that I'm so lucky to have been in. It's hard for me to say, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I didn't do such and such. Certainly I've seen things where I've watched somebody do something and I go, I could have done that better, right? Don't you all have that experience in your work, whatever your work is, where, oh, so-and-so, nah. But just in terms of a specific thing, no. Also because I don't think I've been offered like just here, it's yours, that often. I tell this story all the time. I have kids, and one of my daughters, when she was like 5 years old, and she and a friend of hers from kindergarten were with the friend's mom, and they were having ice cream or something after school. And they were talking about their dads and what their dads did, and the woman said to her own daughter, you know what your dad does, don't you? And the little girl said, yeah, Daddy makes wires in houses. And she said, that's right, Daddy's an electrician. She turned to my daughter, she said, you know what your daddy does, don't you? And my daughter said, yeah, he looks for work. Because that was their experience of me. that basically I was, either doing something, if I was offered something, great, and if I wasn't, I was out there, and that's most of the actor's experience, that you're auditioning and you're getting rejected 9 out of 10 times. Yeah, so you have to have a real thick skin. I mean, often when the young actors say to me, do you have any advice to give me? I say, don't. But if you do, make sure that it's a calling, that it's something you have to do, and that you have a plan B. Yes. Sorry, there's a couple of questions
Over here? Amy, over here. I think actually right here in the second row, and then we'll...
Second
Okay.
row and then back there.
I'm
then
coming,
you're
I'm coming.
next.
Don't worry, we'll get to you.
No, you'll be the next.
You're next.
Hi, you're next, don't worry. Mine's less of a question, more of a statement. I know I sort of mentioned it. I did want to tell you, sort of hearing your experience with your kids and how they were so enthralled with like your voice acting experience in The Nightmare Before Christmas. I am a full-time preschool teacher. I just wanted to let you know that you are still their favorite character from the end of August until about February.
And then?
It's Jack the Skellington, and that's all I hear about, and they know every single move to the dance, every single word. They know quotes that you said yourself, not Danny. So,
Thank you.
and they do take like all of it. They think it's still so magical. So even, I don't want to do the math of how many years later, because then I'll feel really old, but they still to this day just have the same magical effect, and I just wanted to share that.
And I think she told me when we talked a little while ago that the kids going around like they're taking their heads off. This lady right here. Yeah.
Right here.
Hi.
Hello.
We don't hear much about the Sentinel. And oh no. Well,
I don't mind talking about it.
When I saw it, I had read the book. When I saw it back then, I thought it was really terrifying. I recently rewatched it, and it is sort of problematic. And I'm just just
All right,
wondering.
well, I'll just tell you in a word, not a word. The director was a asshole. Okay? Not a kind man, someone who made fun of people with infirmities. Because he hired people with real infirmities to be in the scenes from hell, right? And he would make fun of them. It was not a great experience because to be working with that kind of energy was very disheartening. And I called him on it any number of times, and it just nothing. It didn't bother him at all. So, in fact, after that movie, I thought I was going to retire. I was ready to leave the business because it was such a disheartening experience. And I thought, well, this is what humanity is? No, thank you. I think, or at least in the movie business, I think I'll and I literally went to Africa and drove around to East Africa for like 3 weeks in a car. I had friends who had done it before, so they kind of told me where to go. It was an adventure. That's another lot of stories there. And I came back sort of rejuvenated. But it was not a nice experience. No.
I'm sorry I brought it up.
So am I. Because it's the only time that's ever happened to me. I've really been lucky in the sense that I can't say there's been anybody that I've worked with I've worked with people who are a pain in the butt, but not to that level where there was something about the subject matter. And it was just, you felt unclean when you were working. And so I dealt with it in various ways. And, my drug days are over. What? Kidding. Yeah. And the book was very successful. It was a huge best-selling book. Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
You talk about how Nightmare, they didn't know how to market it to kids, but now obviously it's like a phenomenon. It's a household name at this point.
Mm-hmm.
When did you know that it was a thing, or was there like a specific moment where you realized, oh, this is
I
actually
think it's
famous
kind of
now.
built over time, and it was mostly coming to conventions over the last like 10 years, where literally it became more and more in demand, more important. It became, and also seeing it in the culture. Before it seemed to be a kind of niche thing. People who were real, not niche, but niche, but there are a lot of Tim Burton fans out there, obviously, but it spread beyond that. It became something that was just about the holidays and also the genius, and I'll give them credit for this, of Disney merchandising, because that's had a lot to do with it as well, because of the Funkos and the doorknobs and the light switch covers and the stuff that they come out with, music boxes, and I'm never ceased to be astounded at the variety of stuff that they come out with, and it all has kind of cascaded into this thing.
Coming.
You're getting your steps in.
There you go.
So earlier you mentioned that you did some stage shows on and off Broadway.
Mhm.
Which one was your favorite?
Maybe, I don't know, maybe the first one yeah, I guess. Well, there's several. I did a production, the first Broadway show I did was a show called The Rothschilds. And I was one of the brothers, and that, we did it. We were on the road with it. We were in Detroit and in Philadelphia, and then we came into Broadway, and we all became really close friends, and we're still friends. This was 55 years, something a long time ago, and I'm still in touch with all of them. I did a colossal flop called Nick and Nora, where I met my current wife, Joanna Gleason, and we've been together since then. 35 years, 44 years. Yeah. And we have, between us, 9 grandchildren. So that was important, obviously, to fall in love in the middle of a show that was a huge flop, and to still come out of it okay. So, that thing about, you go through thick and thin. We went through thin, and now it's thick. Yeah, it's great. I also did a production of Cyrano on Broadway, where I played the bad guy who turns good, with Kevin Kline and Jen Garner. That was a big hit. That was great, too. Nick and Nora was an musical adaptation of The Thin Man, basically loosely based on the Thin Man stories. It was recreated by Arthur Lawrence, who wrote the book to West Side Story and wrote the screenplay to The Way We Were, and Gypsy, who wrote the book to Gypsy as well. Arthur Lawrence. He was the one who basically, he was the 500-pound gorilla. Nobody wanted to mess with him, and he just had his own way. And you can get into trouble when you try to adapt something that is iconic and turn it into something else. Now, it's worked. It worked with Wicked, but it's very, you're working on a very thin wire. And if you mess up, you mess up big time, and he messed up big time, yeah. But at the same time, I loved Arthur. He loved me, loved Joanna. We were in his good graces, but the show was a major flop. Historic.
So I could just have a statement like her to connect how the love for Jack and the Nightmare Before Christmas goes from preschool to death. I had an ex-sister-in-law who just passed away at 38 from cancer, and her funeral was jacked from the Nightmare Before Christmas theme. So the love of your character goes from generations to death. So
wow.
it was yeah.
Cradle to grave.
Themed, yeah, exactly.
All right, any more?
All right, is there one more?
Any other
And then
questions?
I got to get home.
There's a car to catch, folks.
When you did that Child's Play movie, how was it like working with, what was her name, Catherine Hicks and Alex Vincent?
Oh, great. Yeah. Catherine's a wonderful woman. She's very funny, very interesting. She's got a great sense of humor. And Alex I don't know if you guys have met Alex at conventions as an adult. Have you guys met Alex? Any of you? No? Oh,
We've had
he's
him
a
at
really
HorrorFest,
interesting
folks.
guy now. Alex is in his 40s, right? He's a music producer. He's a writer. He's a terrific human being. And at the time, he was one of the most preternaturally amazing children. You know, the first time I met him, he came up to me and he said, "I saw you in Fright Night." He was like 5 years old. Now, and also Alex tells, he did a podcast that I do, and Alex told me the stories about how he used to go, his mother would drop him off at auditions because he was so sort of self-possessed. You know, he'd go in, he'd read the copy, and then he'd audition. He was amazing when he was a kid. Yeah, yeah. And Catherine was the best. She was also on my podcast. Thank you, guys.
Let's hear it once more for Chris Sarandon, everybody.
And thank you all for being here. You're why we're here.